Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the CRM Stage webinar. My name is Jen Nelson. I will be your host for the session on declarative admins. You are part of the DevOps process. This is a pre-recorded session which will be aired on December 3rd during the CRM Stage conference. We will also have a Slack channel available where I will be live responding to questions during the playback of this session. And please rest assured that you will receive a copy of the slide deck that I'm going to be going through as well. So what I would ask of you is I want to share with you my story, my journey as a declarative admin, what I've learned about the declarative admin role, what I've learned along the way about DevOps, which I was not made aware of in the early parts of my declarative admin career, and how those two can come together and how you can not only be more aware of your fit in the DevOps process as a declarative admin, but also how you can increase engagement with other DevOps team members, modify your processes to be more in line with traditionally accepted DevOps processes, and also increase the tool set awareness that you have for tooling that will help as you make your DevOps journey. As I mentioned, my name is Jen Nelson. I am an 18-year veteran of the Salesforce ecosystem. Like many of you, I started out as an accidental admin. And for many points in my Salesforce career, I have also been a solo admin, meaning that I, pretty much worked on my own and leveraged things like the Trailblazer community and others who were like me as my support system and as my learning. I did 10 years as a system integrator and an ISV partner on Salesforce in both the commercial and the nonprofit spaces. I am currently in the Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame. I served 4 years as the Chicago Suburban Illinois admin group leader. For 3 years, I was a member of the Midwest Dreamin' Planning Committee. I've done multiple presentations at Dreamforce. I currently hold 5 Salesforce certifications. So I have the admin, the platform app builder, the Sales Cloud consultant, Service Cloud consultant, and Field Service Lightning certifications. And today, I am now a director at Capado. I'm the director of the Global Services Program Management Office. So I've had a long journey in the Salesforce ecosystem. As I mentioned, predominantly as a declarative admin, not as a traditional developer. But in my last 2 years, my most recent 2 years, I have learned that all along I have been part of the DevOps process. Want to give you a little bit of my story. So as I mentioned, I was a declarative admin and a principal solution architect for nearly 16 years before I learned that I was part of something called DevOps. I had heard the term DevOps occasionally, but it was predominantly in the context of the traditional developers that may contract with me or may have been coworkers. Maybe it was in the context of someone responsible for releasing to production, but generally it was never applied to me or to my role. So I didn't even realize that I was part of the process. As I mentioned, I was predominantly siloed in my work. I was offered very little process insights or tooling to support my work effort, other than, as I mentioned, the support that I received from the Salesforce Trailblazer community. So sometimes I would be working toward a particular solution, working on testing a feature, working on deployment, and I was stuck. And thankfully, I was able to go to the Salesforce Trailblazer community, find others who had either gone through similar struggle in the past or who had a little bit more DevOps experience than I did. And they were able to help me along the way, just as I and others do now for those of you who are coming up and moving through your own DevOps journey. In my time, I delivered tremendous volume of very high quality, very high value metadata changes to the end users that I was serving, but it was through my own sheer grit and determination. It was not because I was part of any DevOps team or because I had any training in it. It was just going through my own lessons learned. As a very simple, very familiar example, after one or two projects working in a sandbox and then trying to deploy my changes from a sandbox to production, I learned very quickly through my own missteps and failures that if I had to move a lot of metadata, which I often did, it made sense to put them into 3 separate change sets. So all of the objects and fields that I had created or modified went in my first change set and got deployed to production first. Then any code that was written or updated by a developer that was working on the project with me went in a second change set and got deployed second. And then everything else, all of the Salesforce automations, the workflow rules, the process builders, the flows, approval processes, entitlements, validation rules, layouts, lightning pages, list views, all went in the final change set because of the way that the metadata builds upon itself in Salesforce, right? You can't deploy a new layout for an object without deploying the object and the fields that belong to that object first. So as I mentioned, it was a lot of sheer grit and determination. Since joining Capado 2 years ago, I have actually learned a tremendous amount about DevOps and DevOps processes. I've learned that they do in fact include and can benefit me, the declarative admin, and you, and I want to share those insights with you today. So the agenda for the remainder of this session, I'm going to step through very quickly just an overview of the declarative admin role. We're going to look at beginner declarative admins, intermediate and advanced declarative admins. Oftentimes in DevOps circles, the declarative admin is referred to as the low-code developer. So more of a traditional developer would be a high code developer, developing in different development languages and different development platforms, where a low code developer is using points and clicks like we do to achieve the results. So we're going to look at that real quick. Then I want to step through the traditional software development lifecycle, just to talk through what all the pieces are of a software development lifecycle and help us all to remember that a lot of the things that we are doing today as solo admins and awesome admins are actually part of the software development lifecycle. We are making changes in software, Salesforce, and delivering it to our end users. Then we're going to do a quick overview of DevOps and understanding what DevOps is. And then we're going to step into talking about how the declarative admin fits into DevOps. We're going to take a quick look at a trailhead trail that is 100% declarative. And then we're going to look at a matrix that puts together how that trailhead trail and all of the metadata changes that it entails fit into the phase by phase segments of DevOps and the software development lifecycle. Finally, I'll share with you some declarative admin friendly tooling that again, I was not aware of as a declarative admin, but they're things that will help you in your DevOps journey. And finally, we'll talk about where to learn more. So the declarative admin, also known as low-code developer role. Typically, when we're a beginner admin, we're going to focus on activities like creating custom objects and custom fields, manually importing and exporting data into Salesforce, customizing the user experience with some of the basic user experience components like layouts, lightning pages, list views, and actions. We may do some light customization of the mobile experience for our end users that are out in the field that are using Salesforce on their smartphones, creating and managing reports and dashboards, right? A CRM is great if you can get all the information in and you can get it in easily. It's that much more valuable if you can get the data back out. So, creating and managing good reports and dashboards is very helpful. It's just as helpful as our impact on the front end where our users are inputting data. And then promoting feature adoption and discovery. Over my 18 years in Salesforce, I can't tell you how many times I have had users be surprised. They didn't know that a particular feature or particular functionality was already available in Salesforce today. So making sure that our users have that awareness and they understand how the features and functions can benefit them and can fit very nicely into their role to make them successful on Salesforce as well. When we get into an intermediate level admin, then we're getting more advanced. We're creating and managing formula fields and validation roles. And our formula fields, we're not talking about simple 1 + 2 = 3 formula fields, although those have a time and a place. But we may even get into advanced formula fields that are doing calculations and manipulation of date fields or date time fields. We may be doing formula fields where if a particular data value on the record comes up, then we present an image tied to that value. So if a status is draft, we might display using a formula field an image of a piece of paper with writing on it. If something is approved, we might show a thumbs up icon on the record. And if a record is rejected, we show a thumbs down icon. So formulas can get pretty advanced. Validation roles also can get very advanced. So validation roles, not just simple validations like if the pick list field on a record is selected as other, that we require other details, text box to be filled out, but we can get very advanced around the structure and the type of data. So as an example, if you have a field on a record to capture the associated state, the United States, a state, you might want to ensure that all states are entered with 2 characters and that they are all uppercase, not mixed case or lowercase. And so you can create validation rules for that as well. Create and manage roll-up summary fields. So if you have multi-tiered records where there are children, parents, maybe even grandparents, you can leverage roll-up summary fields between 2 layers. So for example, if I have a particular number value on child records, I can roll up the summary of all of the children's number values to a parent record. Managing and maintaining data security for objects, fields, and records. So making sure that the right users have access to certain objects, fields, and the records in those objects and fields, and making sure that the users who should not have access don't. Managing and maintaining pick lists and global value sets, adding Salesforce automation such as workflow rules, process builders, and/or flows, automating data imports and exports, and evaluating and recommending AppExchange solutions that can further extend the Salesforce platform. Finally, when we get to an advanced admin role, then we really start running and really stretch the boundaries of what we are able to do on the platform with simple points and clicks. So at that point, we are managing and maintaining advanced formula fields, creating and managing advanced Salesforce automations like really complex process builders, flows, approval processes, entitlements, if we're using entitlements in Service Cloud, implementing and managing advanced Salesforce features like forecasting for our sales team, omni-channel for our support team, marketing automation for our marketing users, Lightning Knowledge, Field Service Lightning, Salesforce Maps, Salesforce CPQ, and the different flavors of communities, now called digital experiences. So there may be communities for customers, for partners, and for our own internal employees that we would manage. As advanced admins, we're also performing complex data migrations, and typically we would implement and manage integrations of other systems to and from Salesforce as well. That's a lot that we're touching, and keeping in mind that we're doing it all through points and clicks. We are not writing traditional code in languages like Python or Java or Apex. We're doing this all through points and clicks, but we still have very big impact on the metadata and therefore on the DevOps that is being the DevOps for the Salesforce platform. So let's step into talking about the software development lifecycle, because that is such a big part of DevOps. The software development lifecycle is typically represented in 6 to 8 key steps, depending on who you talk to. I think there are 8. So, and these steps are not cyclical, or I'm sorry, these steps are cyclical. They are not linear. So the first step to any software development lifecycle is planning, thinking through how many resources do you have to make these metadata changes. Oftentimes I had one, me, and what is their capacity to deliver change to end users? So not just how many hours a week do they work, how many hours do they have focus to be able to put toward gathering requirements, toward designing changes, toward actually building those changes and delivering them. And how frequently do you intend to deliver change to end users? Oftentimes, those of us who come into these declarative admin roles, we have a very much a customer first, customer forward mentality, and we want to make people happy. We want them, we know the power and the efficiencies that can come from using Salesforce. So we want to make everybody happy and successful, but we have to make sure that we don't overextend ourselves, that we don't overpromise beyond what our capacity is to actually deliver those changes. We also want our end users to get in a habit of knowing that the system is stable, that Salesforce is stable. So we aren't constantly making changes all throughout the week, but maybe we know that, hey, every Friday we're going to deliver a new release, or twice a month we're going to deliver a new release, or in some cases it might be once every several months, 3 to 6 months I've seen where teams deliver changes, metadata changes, so that your users aren't constantly guessing, is this old functionality or new functionality, making sure that your users have been trained on what's coming. So really think through that planning in the beginning. Then the second phase is requirements. In any software, whether we're talking about net new software, enhancements to the existing software, or things that are deprecated because they are no longer either in use or no longer appropriate for the need of the end users, should be driven by end user requirements, supported by both need and relevant use cases. So we want to make sure as we're going through and gathering requirements that we're really having a lot of dialogue with our end users to truly understand what it is they're asking for, what problem they're trying to solve, or what enhancement they're looking to add to what they already have, and to really understand the use cases, because there's so much that is unique to each of our end users' roles. We don't want to make assumptions on language that they use in their requirements, that we have a common understanding. We want to get into those use cases and really dive into them. Then we get into the phase of design, and the design should not just meet the requirements, right? When we're designing, we're not just being order takers and saying, this person said that they need, a door on the roof of their house. We should be thinking about not just meeting the requirement, but thinking about following accepted best practices for the usability of what we configure, for security of what we configure, for compliance implications to what we configure, and for scalability. We want to make sure that what we are designing can persist as long as we need it, and can grow as the end user population grows as well. What works for 3 users may not work for 30 users. So we want to think ahead. Perfect example in the design arena today, Salesforce has 2 different metadata components, one called custom settings and one called custom metadata types. They are very similar. The custom metadata types were born out of deficiencies or gaps in custom settings that were identified by other Salesforce users. So custom settings allows you to create what I call light custom objects and custom fields. You just basically create a custom object. You can add custom fields, but there is no other object customization to custom settings. There are no page layouts, there are no validation roles, nothing like that. And the intent is that it allows you to create records, records of data with very simple attributes to them that can be used in your developer's code in Apex or Visualforce, or can also be used in your own Salesforce automations. So it's like a tiny table instead of a big table that we use with traditional objects and fields. Well, because of the fact that all you could do was create objects and fields, then a few years later, Salesforce came up with custom metadata types, which gives us kind of that intermediate solution between custom settings, which are just objects and fields, and full-on custom objects with fields, layouts, field sets, record types, page layouts, etc. So custom metadata types is the mid-range, and they allow not only custom objects and custom fields, they also allow you to customize page layouts as the custom metadata type records are presented to users for entry, for updating, or for general viewing, and they allow you to add validation rules. So you have to kind of think through when you're designing, what is the need? Would I go with a full custom object? Would I go with custom metadata types, or would I go with custom settings, right? So that's one very good example in the DevOps world and in the software development lifecycle. Then the fourth phase is build. So when you are building, you should not only meet the requirements, but you should also follow platform accepted best practices for configuration and development. So it's not enough that what you build meets the requirement. There you go. It did what it said. But we want to make sure that as we are building to the requirements, to the design, that we are following platform accepted best practices for configuration, and that our fellow traditional developers, the high code developers, are following best practices for platform development. The fifth phase is document. So complete and thorough documentation of both the technology that you have developed and related processes is crucial to software adoption. You know, we can build things and we can deploy them to our end users, but if we don't have proper documentation, even the most intuitive software, users are going to have questions. And so it's always good to have documentation for your end users. It's also good to have documentation for yourself, so that you remember why you made a particular change, why you added a particular custom object or custom field. So document as you go, and then you have that long-standing history of why you made the changes and when you made the changes. Sixth phase has multiple layers to it, multiple aspects, but it is quality and testing. So there are actually three aspects to this. There is quality assurance, so making sure that the configuration, development, and related processes that we are delivering to end users follow accepted best practices. So that's, you know, have we done best practices for our configuration, for our development, and for the related process that our users are going to follow with those metadata changes. Quality control is ensuring that the software we're delivering meets expected standards for usability, for scalability, for security, and for compliance. And then testing is ensuring that the software we're delivering meets the requirements, passes the regression, so we haven't broken anything that was already there and results in the expected user experience and outcomes, because user experience is not our only outcome, right? Our outcome of our software development may also have impact to downstream other integrations, other systems, may have impact to reportability. So we want to make sure that we're testing not only for the user experience, but also all of those outcomes of the development we're delivering. From a deployment perspective, we all traditionally think about the final deployment, which is deploying our changes to production, which gets them to our end users. But if we are following good software development, good DevOps practices, best practices, we actually have multiple environments that our software travels through. So we have development environments, then we may have QA environments, we may have UAT environments, and then we have production, so that we go through and we ensure at each stage through the pipeline that we're deploying that we have good quality and that we're testing along the way. This way we are not surprised when we go to do our final deployment into production. We're not caught off guard because we've been doing deployments and testing quality control all along. The final phase, maintain, is what drives the cyclical aspect of the software development lifecycle and of our piece in the DevOps process. So once we deploy changes to production, the circle starts again. We go back, we reassess our own capacity to deliver, our own timelines available, then we gather requirements for the users for what new things or what additional enhancements they want to bring into Salesforce. So we've talked about the declarative admin role. We've also talked about software development lifecycle. Now we're piecing it together into DevOps. So DevOps is just a software engineering approach that combines software development and software operations. That's the DevOps throughout the software development lifecycle. The term DevOps has many authorities. You'll hear it many times. It's used in many different contexts, but at the most basic, it's a combination of the people who are delivering the software, who are in some way affecting the software delivery, right? So all of the people, the processes to get that through that software development lifecycle, and the technology that we use. And the common goal is software development and delivery that adds value to our end users. At my employer, Capata, we evangelize 5 phases of DevOps. So at the most basic phase, visibility, it's increasing the visibility of all of your planned work, all of the environments where you will be working on those changes, use of version control to make sure that we have proper versioning of our changes, and awareness of bottlenecks that we need to overcome. The second phase is quality. So we want to make sure that we are increasing over time, progressively and continuously increasing the quality of the work that we are delivering and its impact on usability, security, compliance, and scalability. The third phase is speed. So it's increasing the automation of our processes, of any conflict resolution between the different versions that we are moving into through our environments and into production. Increasing the automation of testing for functional, non-functional, and regression testing, and for automating our pipeline delivery so that we don't have to take 8 hours for every 100 hours of metadata work just to move our changes from one Salesforce org, like a Sandbox or a Scratch org, to the next environment. Innovation is increasing our value prioritization and our value realization. So we want to not only increase the realization that our end users have of the value that we are adding to Salesforce, but also increasing the value prioritization of that work. So as more requests for metadata changes come in, we work with our end users and our other members of the DevOps team to prioritize those change requests based on the value that they will add to one or more group of end users. Increasing the adoption of the software that we deliver and increasing the collaborative feedback loop so that we can get feedback from our users more quickly, more efficiently, and incorporate those into our software development lifecycle planning phases. And then resilience is increasing our agility, our strategy, and our continuous improvement, where at the same time, we also want to reduce rigidity, resistance to change, bureaucracy, and assumptions. We do not ever want to assume anything. We want to investigate and research and get to what we know, not what we assume. So a declarative admin in DevOps, in my experience, traditionally, a declarative admin is neither considered nor terribly aware of their role in DevOps. For me personally, and just in conversation with other declarative admins, I spent nearly 16 years as a declarative admin, but never heard the term DevOps. I often worked by myself, and I had little to no tooling to support my work effort. Oftentimes, declarative admins are without the benefit of visibility for themselves, right? Visibility of what they're doing, without the benefit of tooling, without the benefit of access to or collaboration with other DevOps team members, and without recognition of the power and the depth that we add to software development through points and clicks. Okay. So just a quick overview here. If we take as an example, and as I mentioned, you'll get the slide deck, you'll be able to click into this. But on Trailhead, there is a trail called Build a Travel Approval App. And it's a pretty cool trail with about 5 projects to it. And it's a great example of the breadth and the depth that a declarative admin can bring to software development on Salesforce through points and clicks. The trail does include a wide array of metadata, including custom objects and fields, a lot of Salesforce automation, customizations to list views and layouts, test data, and reports and dashboards. What I am now doing here is pulling together the software development lifecycle phase, the metadata to consider, the admin activities for each phase, and who all within this DevOps community the declarative admin is going to be engaging with. I would encourage you to take the work that you have planned, the work that you are going to be responsible for, and map it out in a matrix like this and think through to yourself, okay, what phase is this technically? What metadata do I need to think about in this phase? What are my typical activities at this phase? And who do I need to be engaging with so that I'm not hanging out here by myself and making all these decisions by myself and then having to re-engineer what I solution or what I deliver later on. And so I go through here with the context of that trailhead on the last slide and say, okay, for planning, not really considering specific metadata in planning. Planning is not about the metadata that you're going to deliver, the software you're going to deliver. It's more about you. So identify you and your team, if you have a team, your capacity, know your current skills and your bandwidth to learn new skills. You don't want to be committing to people that you will deliver something that you have no experience working with within the Salesforce metadata. Identify your timeline. So what is your timeline to deliver change to users? How frequently are you going to deliver those changes? And you should be engaging with your manager, right? Because your manager helps you to manage your capacity and your timelines and helps you to set expectation with all of your end users. And then also engage with those end users and stakeholders who are expecting change from you. For requirements, you want to make sure to gather requirements not only for the user experience, for things like data and security, and really understand all of the use cases. Again, engaging with end users and stakeholders. When you're designing, these are just some examples, but you want to think through things like, when I'm designing a user experience for inputting data into records or editing data in records, which is a better experience for them? Page layouts, native page layouts, Lightning pages, or maybe even the newer dynamic forms within the Lightning pages. If I'm setting up pick list fields, do I want just individual pick list fields with their own manually entered value sets? Or do I have repeatable pick list value sets like yes, no, or red, yellow, blue, that I actually want to leverage on multiple pick list fields on different objects, where I would create a single value set and then just attach my pick list fields on the different objects to that one value set so that I have a single place to maintain and manage over time. Which Salesforce automation am I going to use? It depends on a case-by-case basis, but sometimes workflow rules are the most appropriate, sometimes process builder, sometimes a flow, sometimes a quick action. For tooling like approval processes, where do my approvers spend most of their time? Do they spend it mostly in Salesforce, where I would allow them to approve and reject right within the app on the record screens? Do they spend a lot of time in their email that I should give them the ability to respond for approve or reject via email? Are they in Chatter that we can actually leverage Chatter approvals? Are they on their mobile device and they need that capability to approve via mobile? And so as an admin, we want to make sure to document our design recommendations, review them with end users to get feedback, and ensure that the designs consider usability, consider security, consider compliance, and consider the long-term scalability. We should be engaging with end users, with solution architects or technical architects, and with data specialists. When we build, as I mentioned previously, we want to build according to generally accepted platform configuration best practices. We also want to make sure we collaborate with other declarative admins and developers contributing metadata changes in the same period so that we don't collide with one another, so that we don't overwrite each other's work. As we document, we want to clearly and concisely document any new, changed, or deprecated metadata, and we should be maintaining that collaboration with end users, with solution architects, with data specialists, and with other declarative admins or developers as we develop that documentation. For testing, we want to go through and make sure that what we are delivering has good quality assurance, has good quality control, and tests well, that we have actually configured something that meets the requirements, that passes regression testing, and that results in the expected user experience and outcomes. Look at all these people we need to engage with. We need to engage with our end users, our solution architect or technical architect, the data specialist, other declarative admins and developers, QA analysts, quality control analysts, and testers. When we actually deploy, we need to identify dependencies amongst the metadata that you plan to deploy. So as an example, you won't be able to deploy your process builder or your approval process before you deploy the objects and fields that the process builder or approval process is based on, right? You got to have the objects and fields out there first. We're going to engage with our end users, data specialists, other declarative admins and developers, and possibly even the change management team or the release manager to do that deployment. And then for the maintain phase, identify those opportunities for improvement, really engage with our end users, and start back at the beginning of our phase. So final thought here about declarative admin friendly tooling. As I mentioned, oftentimes I wasn't exposed to tooling out there to help make my job and my role as a declarative admin in the DevOps process and the software development lifecycle more automated and easier. So continuous integration tools, continuous delivery tools like Capado are very declarative admin friendly. They provide far greater metadata access, version control, quality gates, environment sequencing, and pipeline automation than native change sets. Application lifecycle management tools like Jira or Azure DevOps provide declarative admin-friendly platforms for planning and managing all of your work to be done. Version control like GitHub and GitLab provide declarative admin-friendly platforms for baselining the versions of your metadata, of all the metadata supported by the metadata API, and maintaining version history and version control as you make incremental changes. So think about your account page layout today in production. That is a version of that metadata. If you then in a sandbox make modifications to that account layout, you have now created a new version. When you deploy that version to from your sandbox to production, that introduces a new version of the layout in production. But Salesforce natively does not track that version history. It does not keep versions so that you can roll back to them. If you have a version control system like GitHub and GitLab, you actually have that version history and version control so that you could roll back a change if needed. And then testing tools like Capado Robotic Testing provide declarative admin-friendly platforms for automated testing that use natural language, virtual robot workers, reusable test steps, and artificial intelligence to help automate your testing process. The natural language, I love. You don't have to write really complex, heavily scripted code to do your automated regression testing. You just simply give it natural language commands. The way I give commands, testing commands to my grandmother. Hey, grandma, go find the word sales on the page and click it once. That's, which makes life much, much easier. So final thoughts on where to learn more. As far as additional declarative admin learning, 100% free, self-registration available. You can go to Salesforce Trailhead, which is a very robust online learning management system for Salesforce. You also have the opportunity to engage with others in the Salesforce Trailblazer community and the nonprofit Power of Us Hub. And you can join Salesforce Trailblazer community groups. I guarantee you there are community groups near you. They may be admin groups, they may be developer groups, they may be a mix, and they are in many, many major cities and suburbs around the world. For additional DevOps learning, I also free and self-registration. I recommend the Capado Success Community, which includes the Capado Academy. Capado Academy is our version of Trailhead because Trailhead is owned by Salesforce. Capado is a Salesforce partner. So we have the Capado Academy within our success community. And then please, I would love to have you connect with me. You can connect with me on Twitter or connect with me on LinkedIn. And I have the links included in the deck. Thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Have a great day.